Story time. The magic of books and video presents.
The Selfish Giant. Every afternoon when school let out, the children would race to the garden of an old abandoned castle to play. They reveled in the grass and fallen branches, hid among the flower-filled bushes, and climbed the lush trees that were always teeming with singing birds. There, they were incredibly happy. One afternoon, while playing hide and seek, they heard a booming voice shout, "Rah! Get out of my garden this instant!" Terrified, they all scurried to their favorite hiding spots and, peeking out, saw an enormous giant who looked furious. The giant had decided to return home after living away for 9 years with his ogre friend. "I've come back to my castle for some peace and quiet," the giant thundered. "I don't want to see a bunch of rowdy, noisy children around here. Out of my garden! Rah!" The frightened children began to run, fleeing as fast as they could. "This garden is mine alone and nobody else's." "Did you hear that?" The giant shouted furiously. "I'll make sure no one else gets in here." Rah! The next day, the giant built a large wall of thorny plants and herbs around the castle garden and placed a sign on the iron gate at the entrance that read, "Private property, no trespassing." As they were accustomed to doing every day, the children would pass by after school and press their faces against the iron bars of the great gate to peek at the beautiful garden they loved so much. But saddened by the prohibition, they left, searching for a new place to play and have fun. When winter arrived, snow covered the ground with its thick white blanket and painted the garden and all its shrubs and trees silver. The north wind howled around the giant's castle and hail pounded heavily on the window panes. "I can't wait for spring to arrive," grumbled the bored giant in front of the fireplace. Months passed, and spring finally arrived, melting all the snow and blanketing the land with colorful flowers. Trees budded, bringing joy to the birds that sang happily across the fields. But in the giant's garden, everything remained cold. Snow and a silvery hue still covered the bare branches of trees and shrubs. "Spring has chosen to ignore my garden this year," the giant lamented day after day. "My garden has become a sad, cold wasteland." One morning, the giant didn't want to get out of bed, feeling deeply saddened by the sight of his once lush garden. Suddenly, he heard cheerful laughter outside and decided to get up and peek out the window. To his amazement, his garden was green once again. The snow and silver color had vanished, and all the trees were adorned with beautiful flowers. This transformation had occurred because children had climbed into each of the trees. Spring had followed the children and returned to the giant's garden. The giant then noticed that only the little boy, who was the smallest of the children, couldn't even reach the lowest branches and hadn't been able to climb any of the trees. Because of this, he was crying non-stop. The giant felt compassion for the boy, who could only look up at the high branches without being able to climb and have fun with the other children. "Oh, how selfish I have been. Now I understand why spring didn't want to visit my garden. I will tear down this hateful wall and make a beautiful park here for children to enjoy and have fun whenever they want. But first, I have to help this little one climb one of the trees." The giant descended the castle stairs and quickly made his way to the garden to help. But when the children saw him, they became frightened and ran away as fast as they could. Only the giant and the small boy remained in the garden, and because his eyes were full of tears, the boy didn't notice the giant approaching. As spring was fading from the garden behind the children, the giant scooped up the little one in his arms and said, "Don't cry, little one." He lifted the child up to the branches of the nearest tree. Instantly the tree burst into bloom with flowers and fresh green leaves. The boy threw his arms around the giant's neck and kissed him. When the other children saw that the giant had become kind and gentle, they all came running back to the garden, bringing spring with them once more. The giant laughed joyfully as he played with the little ones. Every now and then, he would run to knock down a section of the wall with his big axe. As evening fell, he realized it had been a while since he'd seen the little boy. "Where's your little friend?" he asked. He anxiously questioned the other children, but the little ones didn't know. In the days that followed, the children returned to play in the garden, and the giant always asked them the same question. "Have you seen the little one today?" And every day, he received the same answer. "We don't know where to find that boy. The only time we saw you was the day you knocked down the wall." The giant was sad because he had grown very fond of the little one. Years passed and the giant grew old until he could no longer play with the children in his garden. One spring morning, looking out the window, he noticed a graceful tree he had never seen in his garden before. Its golden branches were full of bright white flowers, and its fruits were silver. And beneath that tree stood the little one, whom he hadn't seen in so long. "At last, you've returned," the giant exclaimed joyfully, forgetting that his legs no longer had strength. He ran down the stairs and across the garden, but when he reached the little one, he was filled with anger. "Oh, who did this to you? You're covered in bruises and wounds. No matter how old I am, I'll find whoever did this to you." Then the little one smiled sweetly and said,